If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hi, welcome to Switching Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and I'm speaking to Neeraj Sagar, the founder and CEO of WisdomCircle, who is helping people get, very bluntly, jobs post-retirement, right? So
That's
hi,
correct.
Neeraj. Yeah.
Hi, Anuradha.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure entirely. And so tell us, what is WisdomCircle? You were going to tell me a story before we started about how you started this. We were talking about how, we are similar ages. We're both 53 going on 54, and how, it's difficult. It's a reality, rather. It's challenging for people post 50. So tell me.
So I think, so my story is that I used to color my hair, and I stopped coloring my hair about 10 years ago. So which means I was 44 then. And what I realized is that suddenly everybody started looking at me different and treating me differently. So a couple of examples, right? So, I was in a client service business. When I would go meet somebody very senior, they would make me sit outside when I had black hair. And suddenly now I was ushered into the boardroom. I was given better cutlery to have tea in. And I was thinking, what happened? And suddenly it was my white hair. So, and then of course, I would go to, any, like a pharmacy, right? I would get, instead of normal 10% discount, they start giving me 20%. Because they say, sir, senior citizens get 20%. Hai. And I was like, I'm 44, damn it. So anyway, and then, Indigo bus, people older than me will get up and sit and give me a place to sit. So I think when I started observing all of this, I said, yeah, there's something here. Anyway, that was one part of what fed into my decision to say, look, there is something right or wrong. I need to figure that out as we get older. And then, I used to be an executive search consultant with Egon Zehnder, which is a very large, very reputable global search firm. And then I would have a lot of my friends reach out to me and say, look, Neeraj, I'm about to retire. What should I do? And honestly, even being a part of one of the largest search firms in the world, I did not have an answer for them. I was like, yes, you can join a board, you can be, but there's some very limited roles that exist. Not everybody who wants to work can find meaningful things to do. And then, of course, I had, in my own family, I had people who were retiring. I had a cousin who was retiring from Reserve Bank of India, and she asked me, she said, Neeraj, I'm about to retire, kya karu? I said, look, Didi, I don't know. What do you want to do? She's like, LinkedIn profile banao. So anyway, so lots of these things added up, and I think got me to start thinking about this problem during COVID. And COVID, I just had a lot of time to think about this, and I read a lot of books, I attended a lot of courses, I sort of understood aging and longevity. And that's when I realized that everyone was solving for us to live longer, but there were very few people even thinking about solving for what will we do if we live longer. So that's how this idea of WisdomCircle started.
What was the first step to setting up WisdomCircle?
Quitting my job. I think I literally.
Very ironic.
So I turned 50 and I quit the same week. And I went to my company and I said, ho gaya. I need to, do something different and for this segment. And it took me about 7 or 8 months to finally exit. But that's exactly was the first step. The second step was, okay, shit, now I've quit, what do I do? And then was starting to think about, the plan, what do I really want to solve for? How am I going to do it? I remember sitting, I think it was February of 2022, sitting in front of the same laptop that I'm doing this call from and saying, okay, I don't have a job. I've just quit a very nice job. I have a dream. I had to figure out what to do. So that's how it got started. The first thing I did was actually, spend time in designing the logo, believe it or not. Anyway, and of course, raising capital to get started.
Yeah, so age tech is a thing, right? This is called
Oh,
age
very
tech,
much.
right?
Yeah, very much. In fact, the reason it's got the name age tech, or at least the reason I picked it up was, there is a lady who runs this website called the Gerent Technologist, and she comes up with this map every year called the age tech market map. So I was like, yeah, what is this? So I'd taken one of her courses. Her name is Karen Atkins, and she was the one who I found online who was just talking about this subject a lot. So again, during COVID, there was a lot of exploring from my end, saying what is going on in the world. And she used the word age tech, so we sort of adopted the word age tech, and age tech is now a phrase we use internally as well as here, in India, because one of the things I started doing about 2 years ago is I got a lot of my friends who are working in this aging and longevity space to all come together. So we have a WhatsApp group for age tech founders in India. It's called the Age Tech Founders
How
WhatsApp
many of
group.
you are there? I'm just curious.
We're more than 100.
More than 100. And
More
that
than
is in
100.
India.
That's just India. I mean, I have some folks who are of Indian origin who are overseas who are also on the group, but yeah, primarily India. People just solving for different problems,
Yeah.
sharing different things. In fact, one of our group members was in the US last week to attend a conference, so he just sent a summary of all his notes. So it's like we're sharing with each other, we're talking to each other, we're building the ecosystem, we're trying to figure out how we can support each other. So it's a growing group, and I think we all, because all of us are all sort of purpose driven in a way. I mean, yes, these are all mainly for-profit businesses, but the fact that there is a bigger purpose behind this, and all of us have our own stories, I think it just brings us all together.
Yeah. So what is the purpose? What is the goal for this?
For
May sound like a dumb question. I'm sorry.
Wisdom Circle or for the Age Tech WhatsApp?
Sorry?
For the goal for what? The goal for Wisdom Circle or the
The
goal?
ecosystem that you're building,
Yeah, the goal for the ecosystem is simple, right? I think it is solving for this segment, or solving for us as we get older, and making sure that we can complement each other for the various services that need to be provided as one gets older. So that's what the purpose is. And then also learning from each other, because in fact, one of the logic we have is, look, even though we are competing with each other in some cases, the market is so big. I mean, the numbers are just, I mean, the numbers. We have in India, just in India, 150 million people over the age of 60 today. It's a very big paradox in our country, right? So our median age is 28, 29, and we have the second largest absolute numbers of people over the age of 60. And this number by 2050 crosses 300 million. It is, staggering.
Yeah,
right?
crazy numbers. Yeah.
Crazy number. And then also, by the way, in the Western world, people are now looking at this segment as a target segment for buying power, right? So, which again in India we've not started thinking about it as yet, but this is a huge segment that is not. Let me put it this way: performance marketing does not exist for this segment yet. So again, a long way to go. So again, coming back, the purpose for our
Could you
group,
explain that? So I think I didn't get that. Mine, you said the
performance marketing. So in a way, companies are not actively targeting this group to provide them services. I mean,
right.
insurance, yes, healthcare, yes, but that's about it, right? I mean, but these guys also have purchasing power, right?
Of course, a lot of
They
purchasing power.
they don't want to spend, which is a learning, which is a different thing, but we'll
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about that also.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, that's the purpose of this ecosystem development. So,
Yeah, no, and I see that all of you, it's a community, because I see on LinkedIn, everybody's where I found you, and where I also came across PS Srikanth, who I interviewed earlier. All of you are sharing each other's posts and things like that. There's
Correct.
Sukoon, where Srikanth had also given a talk where I was involved for a bit as a life coach. So it's you're right, it's a community, and there may be competition eventually, but it's a huge space, and you're all helping each other.
you're
Srikanth as
right.
well, on the podcast, he mentioned so many services that people are working in, for this age group.
And then,
Yeah.
I think whether it's Sukoon, this friend of ours who put this blog today is Kubo Care. So they're solving for fall detection. So they're all different, there is a company called Khayal and Genwise, and they're doing work on the social side, especially Khayal. There's all these there's a company called Human Edge that is solving for biohacking. There are companies solving for mobility. There are companies solving for cognitive testing like Ivory. So there's some very, very interesting companies. You have Meenakshi Menon in Bombay, doing Gen 60 tribe. You have Naveen in Singapore doing 25 years more. You have a real estate company from the US called Priya Living that's doing housing in India and different areas, and it's for NRIs in particular. I can't even name. There's just so many. Of course, you have the Portiers of the world. You have Get Set Up. You have Atulya. You have. It's just. I have a whole list. I think we have in our group. We start by listing all the companies and what they're doing.
What group is this? Is this a WhatsApp group? Or?
It's a WhatsApp group, and you
Fantastic.
can't be on it. You can't be on it.
No, that's why I didn't even ask. It occurred to me, but I'm saying, no, of course I can't be on it.
But that's it. I think on a more serious note, I think we also have non-profits on it. We have, there's a journalist, ex-journalist, Kavita Krishnan, who only writes about this segment, so she's on it. So we've also have made it inclusive for people who are working primarily.
This is my third podcast on aging, if that helps.
The moment you cross 10, you're a member of.
Okay, done.
This group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we would love to, because I see for us it's not about exclusivity, it's about inclusivity. I think it's just making sure that people who really want to solve for this segment all come together. So that's, I think, our purpose. You have, for example, the Ashoka folks, the Global Ashoka Foundation, the ones who have Ashoka Fellows, they have something called, they have a longevity vertical, they're on the group. So we have some very thoughtful people solving for this problem on this group.
WisdomCircle, I know that the minute I hear about WisdomCircle and I talk to people, all my friends over 50 are going to say that, okay, we are going to register. What is there for us? So tell me, what is there for them? What do you offer?
Okay.
Or, what are you working towards, basically?
So look, we at WisdomCircle are going deeper in one area, which is how do we provide opportunities for people who've stepped away from full-time careers, or what we call post-career folks, retired in some countries as we call it, to come find meaningful work. So it has two parts to it. There are people who are signing up, and then there are organizations who have roles that they want to fill leveraging this talent pool. So we are, in a way, creating a global, structured way for discovery for people who want to work and people who can leverage this segment. So as of now, we have about 100,000 people who've signed up, who want to work. We've been able to list about 2,500 roles from about 300 organizations. And we are still, I don't think we've even scratched the surface. Right? And we are pleasantly surprised that when organizations leverage this talent pool, almost every single company that has hired from us has come back and asked for more. It's always the first time that it's always difficult, because they say, old people, will they have energy or not? Will they be able to contribute? The default is young people, but it's interesting when you talk to CEOs or heads of HR who themselves are in the 50s, they all get it, right? Because they can see themselves also in that. Yeah. So it's working, I think, and plus, like I said, we started with India. We are now in very many markets, and we opened Europe and the UK, then Johannesburg, and Singapore, and now the Middle East as well. So we are also expanding, and we also believe that there is a lot of cross-border wisdom sharing that needs to happen. So we are still, early in our journey, just been at it for almost 2.5 years, maybe 3, but a long way to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question, what people can expect is, look, to sign up, there are no charges. we do not charge people who sign up on our platform. We are a for-profit business with a social purpose. We are not a non-profit. We charge organizations that hire. So
Right.
therefore, anyone and everyone is welcome to sign in. In fact, regardless of age, although we say over 50, but that doesn't mean if you're in your 40s or 30s, you can't sign in, because our view is, look, all of us are going to get older. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
time.
Just a matter of few years here and there.
But
Yeah.
what we do tell people is, please don't come to our platform if you're looking for a career role. And the way we define a career role is a role that leads to a promotion and helps you grow in an organization. Those are not the kind of roles that we do. We do expert, specialist, knowledge-based roles in 3 areas. One is in an area that you're good at. So for example, if you're a metallurgist, if you're a finance professional, if you're an HR professional, if you have a certain depth in something, that's one set of roles. The second set of roles is in education. At the heart of it, we are trying, it's still a long way, but we want to create 1 million teachers out of retirees, if we can. And the third is helping the social sector also hire from this talent pool. Those are our 3 big buckets of opportunities that we like to list or are trying to list. So that's how it works. Come sign up. Once you sign up, you can actually see the kind of roles that are listed. The help we need, now that I'm on the podcast anyways,
Of course.
the help we need, Anuradha, is convincing more and more organizations to tap into this talent pool. This is not a talent pool that is competing with the young. This is a talent pool that is helping the younger grow faster. This is a talent pool which is willing to share what they have learned in their lifetimes. This is a talent pool that wants to give back. And yes, this talent pool needs to be respected, but at the same time also needs to feel relevant to the world. So we tell people, look, for this segment, we are solving for relevance and respect. For organizations, we are solving for a talent pool that comes in quick, is not as expensive as people think from a per unit wisdom cost, if you will. And at the same time is, they're not perfect, but they, the ones who are at least signing up are ones who want to give back. So we're not forcing anyone to come to our platform. It's like this: the people who say, look, I know something, I want to give back, I can teach, I know this area, I'm a journalist, I'm a writer, I'm a metallurgist, I'm a scientist, I'm a, educator broadly, or I'm a, engineer in a certain area, or I'm a supercritical boiler expert, or I'm a Indian Forest Service officer retiree. Anyone can come sign up.
Yeah. So, it's been a sore point with a lot of us of our generation who reach a certain age that, when you apply for a job or people are looking for it, you send this resume, well-padded resume, and that puts people off. It scares people. Oh my God, so much experience. So, what you said that, there's a support that you want from organizations. So what is it that you feel that you're up against? Because I'll tell you, for me, I feel like maybe they feel like the person may be rigid, right? Not open to new ideas, may not be able to work with young people, may not be able to take orders from somebody younger than them. I mean, I'm just saying, So what is the resistance? Or it's just that they've not really thought about it, but, what is it?
It's interesting you ask this question, Anuradha. So first of all, what we perceive versus what we believe is happening to ourselves, I have found a difference. So for example, if you ask anybody, tell me about your parents or your grandparents. So first, if you ask them tell me what you think about older people, and then you ask them about, in your family circle, in your family, what is your view? You'll see that they don't match. Oh, but my parents are not like that, right? So I think there is a narrative around aging that seems to be ingrained in the system that talks about some of these things. This rigidity you're talking about, this ability to not learn as quick, the ability to not be as good in using technology, etc. But look, you and I are both 53 going on 54, and I'd be surprised if like my children tell me today that, Dad, you don't know this. But would they have a view of other older people that may be different from me? Possibly, which again comes back to the narrative that is created in society, right? And then there is a role of media in that. There is a role of movies and television, etc. So I think you're touching on something which is a little more sensitive a topic, but it's not an India issue; it's a global issue. And in fact, I'm a part of Stanford Centre on Longevity, and we are working as an ambassador. We are actually working on a media and entertainment narrative work stream where we are trying to figure out how, in this case, Hollywood, but even in Bollywood, the role that entertainment and that media has in shaping this narrative and how we need to change it. So yes, it exists, ageism exists, but in fact, we were in a panel. There was a panel that happened in the last century summit at Stanford, which I attended in January, and it was interesting. On this panel we had someone who was 20, 40, 60, and 80. Okay, and every single age felt that they were treated based on their age. Okay, so the 20-year-old was saying, "Oh, look, people don't think I'm smart enough or I have the right
Very
experience."
interesting, yeah.
And versus, the 80-year-old was actually saying, "Look, I don't feel that, there's ageism. I do what's on my mind and people have to listen to me, and she's a teacher." So I think ageism as an idea is much more complicated and it impacts everybody. So the way you are feeling about not being able to land something, there are enough and equal issues with the 30-year-old who's being told, "Oh, you're too young for this." Right?
Yeah.
So, but we of course have more voice, so we can say things a little more loudly.
Yeah, more gray hair. People listen to
Correct.
us.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other question is, like you said, that it's Wisdom Circle is not for people who are trying to, build a career, right? So what is a retiree or somebody in their 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s even, what are they looking for? From, let's say, we can call it like their next innings.
So, what we have found in the many conversations we've had as we have built this company, so the personas, as they would say in startup speak, are more of people who are looking to meaningfully contribute. Now, that doesn't mean people don't need money. So let me just break it down. There are people who need money because they have either not saved enough or are in private jobs that have don't have a pension system or don't have enough in their provident fund saving and still have liabilities, right? Children's education, taking care of their parents, etc. So that segment also exists. But what we have been surprised for is that segment is smaller than the segment that has planned for retirement, has the money, gets a pension, but still wants to feel relevant. What is happening today is most people are, this whole notion of, as you and I were talking a little earlier, is retirement is such an abrupt 58, 60 now time period when people are just suddenly told, "Okay, done, thank you very much, go home, enjoy."
Yeah, because I've also come across even they say the next morning, you just don't go to work, and otherwise that's been your life. So it's just this emptiness. What do you do?
It's like, you're running on a treadmill and someone just stops the treadmill.
Yeah, and what you said, we talk about longevity and things like that, but what do you do when you get older? What do you do with your time?
And I think here, my suggestion is, I think a lot of organizations, so we are working currently with Aditya Center for Enriching Lives as well as with Dalberg, and we've done a survey. The results will come out very soon, but we've been studying what people really want and the support they get from organizations or don't. And I think, and what we have learned is, number one, a lot of the support that organizations provide before people retire is insufficient for people to understand the complications post-retirement. For example, most people For the very few companies that do help people think through this, their focus typically is on financial planning. Now, financial planning is one part of the problem. Social engagement, working in non-profits, can you be an educator? How do you move from a doer to a mentor? Right? How does that need to switch in your mind? Where do you even have these opportunities? How do you find them? Nobody knows. Right? So I think there is and by the way, this pool is only increasing, right? The number of retirees growing because organizations have their own challenges, right? They have structures which do not allow older people to continue while younger people are rising in the organizations. So organizations also realize that they are missing out. Now, some Indian organizations will extend retirement age, right? But they do it very selectively. So in fact, to answer your question around what really is the challenge that we are facing, number one, I think organization structures today are not designed, and this is not an India problem, it's a global problem, are not designed to keep people longer who want to work lesser. Right? So say I want to work only 4 hours a day. Yes, there is gig work. Yes, we all do that, but it's designed for the younger people. For older people, there is no mechanism for them to come in most organizations. You go to the largest organizations in the country, right? They do not have an ability to get you for 4 hours and pay you for 4 hours because the organization structures and they're all running in a treadmill that I think people are not stepping back and thinking about it. So we are in a way evangelists to tell organizations that look, maybe you should think about changing structure to incorporate this. Maybe reporting lines have to be thought about different. Maybe leveraging this group for specific assignments is much more relevant than hiring younger people who are untrained to give them those roles. Anyway, long way to work, but I think the positive thing I would say, Radha, is the more and more we talk to people in organizations, I think organizations get it. It's just that they themselves are in a dilemma because at one level they have these younger people and then they have the older people and they have to run a business. So our view is very simple. People have to add value, right? If you add value, organizations that will benefit from that value will hire for that value. In fact, we tell organizations, do not look at this as a diversity inclusion initiative. Don't say, oh, it's age diversity, we have to hire older people. A lot of the folks in the segment don't want charity, right? They want to be treated well for the value they bring and the experience they bring and the wisdom they bring. They don't want handouts. So lots to change, but I think it's taking longer, but it's changing. And I think there are many more supporters of this mission than I thought there would be when I started.
Yeah, no, and you're right, because it's an either or situation. Either you work, lack of a better word, in the rat race.
Correct.
You work your 8 hours and 12 hours and, or if you feel at some point like, look, maybe I need to slow down. I'll just work 4 hours. So the thing is like, you've just opted out of the rat race. So you've like basically opted out of your work life. Right. So you're right. There needs to be a balance for older people and it should be legitimized that, yes, maybe come in for a project, work for 4 hours, work for 3 hours, bring in experts. But, interestingly, I've seen in education probably, they do bring them in as consultants. So do you see that already happening in certain fields and not happening in other fields? This wisdom,
So let me put it this way. I think so I'll tell you the immediate use case for this segment. The immediate use case of this segment is wherever a company is getting into a new area which they don't understand. Okay, that's one. The second is whenever organizations have work that comes in spurts, right? So projects, if you are a infrastructure related company and suddenly you have to execute on 4 or 5 projects, or if you have to suddenly hire a lot of people who need to get trained. So you need mentors to come in and sort of make sure that, so there are specific use cases. And then of course, whenever there is a specific skill gap in need, like we're working with an organization that has come to us and said, look, we want to build expertise in biofuels, in waste to energy, waste to chemicals, and in hydrogen. And we don't have this expertise. Can you help us find someone who has spent their entire life in this area and can come give us a day a week, 2 days a week? So again, specific expertise, and if you break it down, right? So from a private equity venture capital perspective, when they are again, and the very interesting use case that we've seen is a lot of work is happening online. Now, when online companies want to come offline, they realize they don't have, what worked in online does not work in offline. So they now want to hire people who've set up stores, who've set up supply chains for
Yeah,
offline.
because actually, a lot of people I see in the media as well, they first, because I worked in print journalism and then moved on to the digital, but a lot of people have experience just of the digital medium, right? So even in these stores, maybe they've only worked online and they have no experience of working what we call offline now, which was traditional brick and mortar businesses.
Absolutely. I think you're bang on. So I think those are where the opportunities are. And the other way to think about it, look, most organizations are actually used to hiring consultants and advisors. But a lot of the consultants and advisors either come from their own networks or come through consulting companies like the Big Four and the like. What we are in a way doing is democratizing access to this segment. Right? What we are saying is, you don't only have to look in your network, here's a bigger network. So one of the roles I think we are playing is we are expanding people's networks. That's what we are doing. Right? We're saying, look, come. Otherwise, it's very difficult to find, which university needs which professors of practice or which company needs experts in this. Like, for example, the other day we got a request to say, can you help us find somebody who's an expert in the textile industry who spent their whole life in the process side of textile industry? And I mean, literally, I can tell you in a few days, we had like 20 on-point relevant applications. Why? Because we posted the role, it went out to all the people with textile experience on our platform. They then took that role and put it on their WhatsApp groups. Suddenly all the people who were relevant applied, right? In that batch of that textile engineering class. And here's the interesting part. Unlike when you're younger people tend to compete a little bit more with themselves as well as with others. As you get older, that if you can't do something, you will always suggest somebody else. Because you're like, "Arey, wo nahi mera dost kar sakta hai," So there is the network effects as you get older are much, much higher.
I mean, it's true because, all your life I'm, just thinking that, whatever jobs we get and, through our careers, we are benefited by a network, right? Colleagues, ex-colleagues, other people, common people that you may know, through referrals. Somebody tells you, okay, look, they're looking for somebody, why don't you apply or something like that, right? And as you, after a certain age, when everybody is looking for a job, there's no network, right? So, because everybody's looking, right?
Actually, my point was a little opposite of that. My point was, as you get older, you still have the networks, right? So WhatsApp is just an amazing, I call it invention, call it social, because the point I was making is that people are more willing to help each other as you get older. Than possibly when they were younger. So I think, like, for example, if someone sees a role like this textile engineering role that I was telling you about, right? I mean, people were posting it in their textile engineering class group, saying, "Yeah, dekho ye hai role, see who," and everybody's like discussing it and they're applying. So I think similarly we had a request for and I use supercritical boilers as an example. We had a company that reached out to us saying, "Can you help us find experts in supercritical boilers, but they should have retired from BHEL." And I mean,
very specific.
And we had those people on our platform, right? And we didn't even know, right? I mean, yes, we of course the growth rate we are getting of people is quite amazing, but I think the challenge is the listings of roles are not growing fast enough. So in fact, I look at myself in the role of WisdomCircle as evangelist to convince companies to hire from this talent pool, because there are more and more people wanting to work than there are opportunities to work.
100,000 you said, right?
100,000.
100,000 people. Yeah, amazing. So tell me, I'm just curious, even in this, is there a ceiling for how old you can be to get hired?
No.
Like, will a
Because
60-year-old have more chances than a 70-year-old?
look, the answer is yes, right? But however, so let me put it this way. I think 80% of the people on our platform are between the ages of 55 and 65, or 68 rather.
Yeah.
It's a function of not whether they will get, or a lot of people as you get older, especially you're post 70, you don't want to work. So I think I'm differentiating people who want to work and whether they can get jobs, and versus the proportion of people in which age bracket that want to work.
Yeah.
What happens is and again I'm generalizing, but as we get older, our health concerns increase, our limitations to travel increase. But again, that there are people like my father, till he passed away recently, was 87. I mean, the man was active, right? And for him, even if someone gave him a chai and said, Sagar Saab, can you come? And he's a civil engineer, have a look at this, construction we are doing and any recommendations you have, yeah, he would go very happy. I mean, because that was relevant. People were respecting him for the experience he has, and he would go for a cup of chai. Right? So I think people want to work, but then the desire to earn reduces, the desire to give back increases. And of course, look, I'm not saying that we are cognitively as sharp or continue to be sharper, but wisdom exists, right? I mean, what some people will just look at and give you a viewpoint on in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I mean, that's a lifetime of experience that's come into play. So the question is, are you leveraging this wisdom correctly? So I think in some cases we see organizations hiring older people but making them do younger people work. Like for example, we hired somebody in a marketing role, and she was the head of marketing, and a startup hired her and started giving her copywriting work. And she says, yeah, look, I can do it, but it's not the best use of my time. Right? A 20-year-old, so if you give me a 20-year-old or 25-year-old, I can teach her how to do this better rather than me doing it. And it's not something that's exciting me.
That reminds me of an email I wrote once. Exact wording. Anyway, yeah.
Say more about this email.
Huh? I'm saying this is an email I wrote at work once. Please use me for something better.
I think so. That's the challenge, right? The challenge is how do organizations benefit and first understand the wisdom that's available and then leverage it to the benefit of the organization, not try and force fit people into roles. Right? When you try and force fit people into roles, and it's like you're doing them a favor. You're not doing them a favor.
Yeah, true.
Right? So lots of, as you can see, it's this sector is quite complicated in many ways. This is one piece, but if you look at it at a government level, I mean, you've got policy, you've got retirement age, you've got pension funds, you've got politics of age, and then the youngness of organization and what they want to do with the young people. It's all of this comes together and makes it a bigger mess than it should be. I think the simple thing is, look, you want to work. Why is there an age limitation on work? You have something to contribute. Why can we get organizations to adapt to what people can contribute? And sure, pay them accordingly. Again, I use the phrase price per unit of wisdom, right? The price per unit of wisdom isn't very high as you get older, because most of the folks are not doing it for the money alone. Right? Intergenerational connectivity matters. You put me in front of younger people work, I'm happy to take lesser money because I get energized by working with younger people.
Very true. Yeah, this intergenerational working, could you talk about that a little? I was reading your blog as well, there was somebody who written about that. It's a very interesting concept.
So, in science, I think what we figured, so one of the things that leads people to be happier as they age is intergenerational connectivity, right? It sort of is counter to, for example, everyone living in retirement homes and interacting only with retirees. I think what the science has said is, look, if you infuse younger people in the mix, the energy level of the group goes up. the happiness quotient of the group goes up. And therefore, I think, for example, teaching teaching one to many, where, and you can see this, right? If there's a teacher in the room, teachers are typically happier because they interact with younger people more. So that's intergenerational connectivity at a very fundamental level. Saying, how can I create opportunities and avenues for multiple generations to work together or interact together? So therefore, I tell my friends, I say, look, as we get older, especially if you're over 60, make sure you're doing at least a day a week of teaching, because that provides the energy of intergenerational connectivity, which you otherwise in your day-to-day don't get.
And I think young people, maybe in their 20s, and much older people, I think they get along,
I mean, I think sometimes we give this Gen Z, etc., a very hard time, but they're all like in our company. The youngest person in our company is 21. The oldest who comes to work regularly is 62, right? And she is, and the 21-year-old and the 62-year-old get along well, extremely well.
Yeah.
Right? And
because you see even grandparents and grandkids, there's a different bond. They're friends.
Correct. And I think it again, look, it's on both sides, right? I think when the older folks become themselves and are not afraid of being judged, the relationships become very, very good. And I think, so there is, by the way, I think a way of acclimatizing people post-retirement into this new world and say, look, because, there is a challenge though. I mean, the challenge is that, look, and by the way, I think men age not as well as women do. And I mean that from a perspective of how in fact, men age terribly. I think men get to be a lot more attached to the last designations and the roles and the chairs that they occupy. Women in general do not. Right? And by the way, I know I'm sounding sexist in a way, but that is the case, right? In fact, the other learning...
That is the case. I feel that too. I'm also generalizing, but yeah.
No, but here's the other
It's to do with your identity, right? And I'm sure it's not true so much because, women are achieving, men are achieving. So it is part of a woman's identity as well. But maybe we bear it a little easier. I don't know.
And plus, I think women, at least in the patriarchal setup that at least India has, women are much more accustomed to working at with different layers of society on a much more regular basis than the men are. That's one piece. But here's another very interesting learning which I've told some people, I've not told too many, but is that anyone who has a daughter actually ages better.
Oh, how sweet.
and we found this by speaking to thousands of people, and literally wherever we found somebody have one daughter, so it's like two sons, one son, one daughter, or two daughters or one daughter, right? Depending on it's anyone who has a daughter or multiple daughters just ages much better. Right? They just feel a lot more emotionally in control on aging than people who only have sons. And I'm saying this because we are two sons. My brother, I have two sons. We are two brothers. My brother has two sons. So we are screwed, right? I mean, my parents, right? Or us. Versus anyone who has a daughter. I mean, you were just talking about yourself. There's something about now. Again, you have a brother as well, but your parents are fortunate that they have a daughter.
Yeah.
Right?
But why do you think that is?
I think girls in general emotionally connect better with their parents. So I'll use my example, right? So since my father passed, my mother stays with me. And I'm there for my mother, right? Kya chahiye, doctor appointment, ye, wo, sabji. Am I the best at having a conversation with her to say, how was your day? What did you talk about? I just don't, maybe it's my own wiring, but I know for sure that, my friends uncles and aunts who have daughters don't have that same experience. Their daughters are a lot more connected. So I think there's something about, as you correctly said, about the wiring. So for me, this is observation. The root cause I don't know, or rather I have not sort of figured out. And also,
But it's true, largely true, yeah.
and then, like in my organization, I think almost 70% of the people in my team are women, and they just seem to resonate much more with the solutions of the problem than I think that the boys and the men do. I know it's, I'm not sure if this is a politically correct thing to say, but it is
It's okay, it's an observation, every
Correct.
observation is valid. And it's true because, even my mother, she'll call me because she can have a long chat. And with my brothers, it's mostly,
it's very tactical.
yeah,
We have a
very practical, very practical.
In fact, it's tactical, not even practical. It's like, acha, like I will call my wife saying, acha, taxi chahiye, gaadi chahiye, ye saman chahiye, ho jayega. Right? But can I have a conversation with her and say, acha, kya khaya khana? Walk pe gaye ki nahi? Acha, movie kaun si dekh rahe ho? I'm like, anyway.
It's an effort, yeah.
It's an
Anyway,
effort,
so tell me, what do you think there's an ideal retirement age? Because 58 and 60, like we talked earlier, is ridiculous.
I don't. So actually, my view is. Let me tell you what I'm telling my friends: is do not retire. What that basically means is slow down. It's like saying stop walking, right? So you're running, and suddenly you stop running and you stand. My view is, you're running on a treadmill. Slow down the treadmill. Start walking, but continue walking till you die, like literally. So the way I look at it is, look, you have to be meaningfully engaged in something, right? Because there's a bigger question around purpose, around what drives us. Now, you have to be involved in some purpose. You have to have a purpose, right? And you have to, purpose is not given to you. I mean, some cases it's given to you, yes, but you have to find your purpose. And the purpose may be as little as, look, I'll take care of my grandkids, or I will do something for my community, or I will teach. So if you look back at data and you look at all people who lived well into their 90s and now were centenarians and 100, they all have been doing something meaningful. Nobody's sitting at home doing nothing, right? So there's data on that. I will hear stories of, look, my grandfather taught till the last day. I mean, the very fact that he was teaching in the last day and taking the train to go out and teach, I mean, that tells you something. The second, it's directly correlated to cognitive decline. I mean, the moment you stop using your brain or start reducing the usage of your brain, cognitive decline sets in quicker. Depression, of course, dementia, Alzheimer's. Jitna dimag chalega na, utna you push out dementia, Alzheimer's onset and the rate of decline. So here's a question for you. Which segment do you think becomes more effective as they get older?
More effective? I guess
Correct.
the older generation?
No, I mean, within the older generation.
Within the older generation. Which segment?
Okay,
I don't
let
know.
me ask another question.
Huh.
Which folks never retire? Or in which professions never retire?
Which professions? Maybe creative professions?
Okay, creative is one. What else? Healthcare. So doctors, lawyers.
Doctors, lawyers, yeah.
Accountants,
Chartered
right?
accountants, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Now morphing it. Now, which segment gets more active as they get older?
Doctors, they're pretty active.
Okay, no, but I'm looking for another answer.
Okay. I feel like on the spot, I'm like getting a little stressed now.
Politicians.
Politicians, right.
And the question to ask is why, why do politicians live longest?
Yeah, actually.
दिमाग चल रहा है.
दिमाग चल रहा है, बहुत ज़्यादा चल रहा है कभी-कभी.
And see, and again, in a way, see, this is just data. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm saying, look, use your brain. The more you use your brain, the more fulfilling and a happy life you will have. That's it. That's the problem solved, right?
Yeah, learn from the politicians.
I didn't say that.
I'm saying it.
I didn't say that.
So tell me, what about entrepreneurship? That is one area also, right? For senior citizens, or the term now is senagers, senior teenagers, perennials.
So there's another word called super agers. There's all these other
super agers, yeah.
Super agers. And look, so my take is, look, I also started the company when I was post 50. There are very few of us out there who want to explore. So at the end, it comes back to the basic thing, right? Dimag chalao, right? And now, can you be an entrepreneur after 50? Sure. Do you want to be? Do you want to take the stress of working like a 20-year-old 24/7, etc.? It's very difficult. Now, here's the thing, right? Like, for example, in my case, I work on my terms, right? I will not do 18-hour, 19-hour, 20-hour days. I just can't, right? So, in a way, is it possible? Yes, you can. You want to open a kirane ki dukaan and run it? If that rocks your boat, go do it, right? But the point is, do something that you like doing. I think one of the other things that I've observed as we get older is a lot of people as we get older have a choice. Unlike when I was younger, for example, most of the time we are working to provide or to make a living. I don't need to think about that anymore. Not as much, right? And therefore, like, I can't take crap from people anymore, right? I just can't. Right? So if you are the kind who doesn't want to take crap from people, wants to do things on your terms, then go become an entrepreneur. But also realize that not everybody will like you, but that's okay. Who cares?
Who cares? Yeah, absolutely.
And this, who cares? Not that we don't care. I'm just saying we care less about being judged. We care less about what people think about us. We care less about failure and how will that get perceived. Because, it's like, I tried. So I have nothing to prove anymore to the outside world. If anything, it's only to prove to myself. So is that an area to consider? Absolutely. I think, like I said, everybody's boat to themselves. Whatever rocks it, you do it. I have people who become musicians after retirement. I have friends who've gotten into gardening full time. I have friends who become formal gardeners and take care of their friends' gardens for a month for a fee.
Wow.
So, again, you do what you have to do. By the way, it is all built upon being financially secure. Now, if you're financially secure, then you can do all of this. If you're not financially secure, now then all this is like good to talk about. If you're not, if you're still worried about putting food on the table, then you bloody hell get up and work, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what you're saying is that I think what's really important is to find a purpose. Even after so-called, reaching a so-called retirement age, to find purpose and joy and choice.
Correct.
Right? Choice in how much you want to work and the kind of work that you want to do.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
And look, that's the difficult part, right? It's easy for people to say, "Are purpose dhoond." Are purpose itni aasan thodi milta hai. You have to proactively work on finding purpose. Now, you can make something a purpose, for namesake, but after 6 months, you'll be like, ye purpose ho gaya, next purpose. Purpose itni aasani se nahi milta. You have to think about what is it that you like to do. You have to figure out how others are doing it. You have to figure out is it something you're going to enjoy. You have to be clear about how much time can you give it. And you have to balance everything else that's going on in your life, right? As parents, as grandparents, as caregivers, as just community helpers, whatever, right? Along that, you have to find other things. And by the way, you don't need to have only one purpose. You can have multiple purposes also.
Yeah, but this is a time to figure out your purpose.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Neeraj, finally, if somebody is nearing retirement and they're, worried about it, and some people just tell them, just go get a hobby. So, but that person is like, I don't have a hobby. I don't want a hobby. I don't want to do yoga. I don't want to do all this.
It's a tough one,
I need a job or I need to work. So what is your advice for them?
Yeah, my first advice, Anuradha, is don't start thinking about it when you're just about to retire. This is something you have to start thinking about. You have to ease into that process. So for example, if you know you're going to retire at 60, you should be thinking about this at 55. You should be thinking about what am I going to do after? How am I going to do it? You should start getting involved in non-profit social work sooner. You start, taking up a teaching opportunity sooner. So you have to start getting into and you have to talk to a lot of people who've been there. First of all, I advise people, don't try and reinvent everything. I mean, look, yes, all of us have our own journeys, but that doesn't mean you can't ask people who retired and how they've thought about it, what they've learned, and what you can do with it. Encourage your organization to give you that support, the pre-retirement support as well, right? Because it's a supply and demand thing. If you demand it, they will provide it, right? And of course, think about your finances as well. Again, no cookie cutter answer, but like there's way more. First, be financially secure. And for that, you have to anyway plan like when you're in your 30s and 40s till you get to 60. So if you're not financially secure, then the only choice you will have is to continue working. And then you're going to be in deep shit because you're going to reach 60 and say, I need a job, I need money, and then no one's giving me a job. Then you'll go downhill saying, oh, the world is against me, there is ageism in the world, nobody cares about older people. And then you get into a mindset of the world is out to get me. The world is not out to get you. The world is the way it is. It has always been that way. You have to do something about it. You have control. You have to start thinking about what you are going to anticipate. Don't expect the world is going to come and save you. You have to save yourself. And therefore, for that, you have to just know how to do it. So you have to stay positive, be financially secure. Make sure you have damn good healthcare, though. I think that's one thing that people forget. Buy healthcare early. So if your company doesn't provide you healthcare post-retirement, make sure you have healthcare when you're in your 40s that lasts you till 70.
Yeah, very important.
Or 80 or 90. Because otherwise it's going to dip into your savings like nobody's business. And then there goes your financial planning.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to ask you, Neeraj, before we sign off. This Stanford Centre for Longevity, where, the global ambassador, what does it do? What is the research? Anything that you'd like to share from there?
So I think what I would suggest is the Stanford Centre on Longevity has done a lot of work around living a 100-year life. So they have created something called the new map of life. So what I would encourage people to do is go to the Stanford Centre on Longevity website, download the new map of life. There's a lot of stuff out there to read about. So do that, right? They also host something called the Century Summit every year. It's free for people to join online. Some of us attend it in person, but I think if you're in the California area, you can of course request to attend it in person, but online is free for everyone to attend. And similarly, there are many, many more. So for people who want to be educated about longevity and aging, there is a huge amount of resources out there that you can tap into. Learn about dementia, learn about Alzheimer's, because it's coming for all of us. And especially as we live longer, I'd say many of us are going to go down that path. So you might as well know what it is, and you might as well start doing things to at least prolong the start of dementia, Alzheimer's, and reduce the rate of decline once it happens. It's going to happen to our parents, it's going to happen to our grandparents, especially if they live longer, so you have to know how to deal with it. Anyway, that's my parting 2 cents. But don't be afraid, everybody is going to get older.
Yeah, don't be afraid. There's life beyond retirement.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but thank you, Anuradha. Thank you for your time, and I lovely chatting with you, and wish you the very best.
Yeah,
and to
thank
all
you.
the listeners as well.
Yeah, my pleasure.